Hey Rebels, welcome to Blasphemous Nutrition. Consider this podcast your pantry full of clarity, perspective, and the nuance needed to counter the superficial health advice so freely given on the internet. I'm Aimee, the unapologetically candid host of Blasphemous Nutrition and a double-degreed nutritionist with 20 years experience. I'm here to share a more nuanced take on living and eating well to sustain and recover your health. If you found most health advice to be so generic as to be meaningless, or so extreme that it's unrealistic, and you don't mind the occasional F-bomb, you've come to the right place. From dissecting the latest nutrition trends to breaking down published research and sharing my own clinical experiences, I'm on a mission to foster clarity amidst all the confusion and empower you to have the health you need to live a life you love. Now let's get started. Robyn Shaw is an author, business owner, CrossFit coach, and precision nutrition coach. She has dedicated the last 10 years of her life to helping recovering crash dieters achieve their healthiest and happiest body in a sustainable way. In today's conversation, Robyn and I cover the gamut, from overcoming a perfectionist mindset to the state of parenting and healthcare in the Western world. Robyn shares her experiences and offers some wonderful tips to help with creating consistency when you have anxiety and ADHD that gets in the way of building habits. She also talks a lot about her personal experience with perfectionism and body image, as well as disordered health behaviors, what she has done to transition into a healthier perspective for herself and how she utilizes that when working with others. Rather than being an interview, today's episode is really more like an insider conversation between two professionals in the health space, where we dish on what we find works and doesn't, and well, we even talk a little smack about the industry and what it is like to actually try and make it as what is called a solopreneur or independent business owner. I do hope you enjoyed today's episode, so let's get to it. Robyn, I'm so glad to welcome you to Miss Nutrition. I feel like we are aligned with so many things, and it's always just good fun to shoot the shit with a peer in the field.
Right? Exactly. That's how I feel. I feel like we instantly connected over Facebook, and I'm like, I'm just excited to chat with you and see where it goes. Yeah.
Totally. And then, doing a little bit of homework on you, I found there's so many things I want to talk to you about. So
oh my God, cool. Great. Let's go. Let's do it.
I'm just going to dive in. There's so many aspects that you allude to about your own story that I feel would be really helpful for my listeners to know, to get that firsthand experience, that firsthand vicarious living through what you've experienced. And a couple things that really come to mind is how you talk about breaking free from the perfectionist mindset when it comes to fitness and nutrition and physique. Like, how did you liberate yourself from that tiny box of perfection?
Yeah. I think I'm still in the process of doing that, right? Like, I would be lying if I said that I had no days anymore where I catch myself in that mindset still, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just like anything, especially if we're on the topic of like health and wellness, we're going to be talking in total areas of gray and nuance. Always, there's always going to be that. So I think that reigns true to something like this as well, where it's not just a switch that turned off, right? Like, God no, like I'm still in the middle of trying to like go through that process, and that's a really good question. I think. I mean, it's come for me in like so many different areas. So the first one was the first kind of rein that I tried to break free from was the physical appearance side of things. And so this goes like probably as far back as 10 years when I first started coaching. Well, I've been coaching in some aspect for closer to 15 years because I started off as a swim coach before I went into CrossFit and stuff like that. But
You were
being
a
in,
competitive swimmer, right?
yeah,
In your youth. Yeah.
competitive swimmer for a long time.
Do you feel that that shaped some of that mindset, that drive to?
Yes. So there was, in a way, it was an expectation to live up to the athlete kind of like I have a history of being an athlete, and then I took a long break. So just to give some extra context here, I was a swimmer and very competitive when I was quite young. I quit when I was 15, which is like at your
Mm.
peak, right? These Olympians are 15, right?
Yeah.
That's basically your peak. And so I quit when I was 15. And then what else happens at your life when you're a 15-year-old girl in high school? You want to be social, you want to drink, you want to go out, you're starting to get into partying. You know, I was going into grade 11, almost my senior year of high school. And then, so I went into that and I fell into that like really hard. I rebelled against kind of that 5 a.m. deck time, 5 a.m. training and 2 a days in the pool. And I rejected that whole life and fell into the party scene. And I did that really aggressively until my second year university. So it was like 4 or 5 years of me heavy into drinking, heavy into partying late nights. And I went to art school too, right? So it's not uncommon for people to bring a glass of wine to, or like bring cooler of wine to art class while we're drawing, right? Like people did not bat an eye at it. Like that culture in the art scene and stuff was like, yeah, stay up late, drink, party, socialize, go to gallery openings. And so the reason why I say that is because when I finally started to and really wanted to like pull myself out of that, I went into a CrossFit gym. Well, I was working out for a little bit, but when I did go into a CrossFit gym and was given the opportunity to start coaching, I think there was like this pressure and expectation of me to look a certain way, right? And I had gained weight over the course of partying and all those years, like a significant amount of weight. And I was starting to try and reel it back in and find my best body, my happiest body, my happiest self. But of course, in that process, you start to develop severe body dysmorphia. You start to compare yourself with people around you. Now I'm coaching and I have all eyes on me in the
Right.
gym. I'm coaching a class of 30 plus people. And there's this expectation that you should be looking a certain way if you're going to coach these people. This is what I thought, anyways. So
So it was an internally driven expectation.
it was an internally driven expectation. And there also were comments made. So I my older brother is like one of the fittest men on earth. And I don't even say that exaggeratingly. Like he went to the CrossFit games, competed at a very, very high level, like an absolute animal in the gym. My younger sister is no different. She is an incredible athlete. And my younger brother, so there's four of us total. My younger brother is really, really amazing at his craft, which is BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And everybody knows this because we're all kind of on social media. And so there would be comments, especially because I was coaching CrossFit and they knew who my brother was because he's a public figure in CrossFit. They knew who my sister was because she's very good at CrossFit. And then there would be kind of backhanded comments of like, oh, what happened to you? Right? Oh, like, are you going to compete this year and try and catch up with your sister? Or like things like that. Right. And I know that it was like, haha, joke. I laugh it off, like whatever. But that stings, right? Like that is like, oh, okay, I need to get my shit together. Like I need to start competing against none other than my own family, which is not great, right? When you're starting to like fight that internally. So I then from 2015 to 2017, 2018, I would spend 2.5 hours in the gym. I hired a coach of all sorts. I was like the absolute like quintessential CrossFit nerd and did eat, sleep, breathe CrossFit. Looking back, it was like the worst thing that I did to my body. I got down to like 14% body fat. I was training not sustainably. I was not eating to support the amount of training that I was doing. I was eating like 1,500 calories a day to try and look a certain way, but at the same time, training even more to try and perform a certain way. And so
Did that have any impact on your menstrual cycle?
so I was on an IUD and I still am.
Mm-hmm.
So that, and yeah, so I don't know.
Right.
I mean, jump forward to me being 30, almost 33 now, and I still have an IUD, like ready to get it taken out any minute now because we want to start a family. And this will be the first time where I actually understand my own menstrual cycle, which is crazy to think about. Right.
Yeah.
So, yes, I don't know, to answer your question. Like, I actually have no idea. It could very well have. But so to answer your initial question of like, how did I break free? Well, there's been multiple things that I've had to break free from. The first one is that the physical appearance and like the expectations of living up to being what people think or what I thought a fitness CrossFit coach should look like and act like.
Yeah.
Right. And I think since it's been years and years and years to get past that one, I can pretty confidently say that I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm really happy about that. That is probably one where I'm like, I do not care. And I have no desire to get that lean and work out that much at all, which is so liberating.
Absolutely.
And
real quick, I'm curious,
yeah.
how did your siblings respond to watching you go through that journey?
My older brother, being an older brother, he is very protective, right? And yeah, he was concerned, but he was concerned. I only knew that from one or two very small comments that he would make, not even directly to me, but to my sister, to my family, saying like, "Oh, I hope she's eating. Like, she's really lean. Is she okay?" And and I think my sister and I are funny in the sense that we have such a close relationship, but we're both competitive. So we kind of fed off each other. So I don't know. And it's so funny that this is not fully transparent. Like, this is not a conversation, like a fully open conversation that I've had with either of them, because I think I just was like, okay, I need to work this on my own. I need to get through this on my own. It's not their fault.
Right.
Like, not their fault. So I don't want to burden them with this, right? They did nothing wrong. This was all me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and work on this on my own. And I did. I mean, I say on my own, but, therapy and talking to my husband and, talking to people and writing a book about it and being open about it. Like, there's many outlets that helped me along the way. Yeah, that was like, so I think there was a level of like concern there for sure, but nothing like, yeah, I've never had the opportunity to really just like openly chat about it with them.
Yeah. I think that's pretty common from what I've witnessed as well, is that family members will often watch very closely, but stay silent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't really pass judgment on that. I can't really say that I would necessarily do it differently. It's such a family dynamics are complex enough
So complicated
when there's nothing going on,
right? I know.
It's yeah. I'm really glad to hear though that they didn't, that the sibling dynamic wasn't such that they aggressively fed into the problem or
by no means. No. It was a totally self-fabricated with a little extra sprinkling of comments made by people in the gym. And that's it. Like, I've always held very high standards for myself. I think, but it's so funny. I talk to my sister and she has the same feeling towards me. Like, I compare myself to you when it comes to like business and success and how outgoing you are and social you are and things like that. So there's always going to be something, right? And that was just my own personal thing. And so it took me a long time, and through first taking a step back from CrossFit, and not to say that CrossFit is going to do that to everybody. Like, that was just my own personal experience. But I had to take a big step back from CrossFit, start training and working out a different way, starting to listen to my own body more, starting to focus on things that brought me more joy, like building my business and helping other women. And I think also too, a big part of my healing process in that sense was working with the women that I'm working now. It's the women who really just want to have a better life and be more energized and not worry about the number on the scale, but really just worry about like, okay, can they play with their kids? Can they go for bike rides and hikes without getting too out of breath? Like, and so when you have that put in your face to give you some perspective, then it's like, okay, yeah, like I am so much happier when I'm 20 pounds heavier, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there a moment for you where you were like, I'm done, I can't do this anymore? Or was it a slow realization? How did you go from being in that place where you were overtraining and under eating,
Mhm,
really being, having that external locus of control
mhm.
to really reclaiming and finding your center and your values and what was going to be good for you long term?
Yeah. There's two moments that really stick out to me as huge players in this. And whether or not they were it, I don't know, but definitely big players. One of them was, so I don't know anybody who's listening who knows CrossFit and understands CrossFit. There's this thing called the CrossFit Open that
Mhm.
happens at the beginning of every year. You might be familiar with it. And so I was doing the CrossFit Open and really trying to make it to that next stage of competition, right? And this was like kind of the peak like of where I was the most strung out because my training was at its peak, my eating was at its lowest because you want to be pretty light when you're going into the open.
Yep.
And so looking back, my cortisol levels must have been fucking through the roof. So I was doing a workout and I was getting really frustrated at my performance during the workout, like super frustrated. And my dad happened to be there watching. He came and visited that weekend and he was participating in the open for fun as well. Like the family at that point was all on board. And he saw me getting frustrated and my face was just, you could see the frustration. But remember, I was also still a coach. So people were watching me, right? Like people would watch the coaches do these workouts. And then after the workout was done, I was like kind of pissed. And my dad pulled me aside after and he was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "You're you're a leader here. Like, don't don't show that amount of frustration and negativity. You need to show these people, you need to be the leader, you need to be positive, you need to stay positive, you need to show them that it's okay for it to not be perfect." And he was the first one to pull me aside after that performance and say, like, get it together, basically.
Yeah.
So that was one where I was like, oh shit. Like, yeah, you're totally right. I mean, in the moment, I was like, fuck off, dad. But later, I was like, oh yeah, he's totally right. And then not that long after, I went on vacation by myself. I did a 2-week solo Europe trip. And that gave me just like the physical space I needed, the mental space I needed, just total disconnection. I always say, if you need to get some perspective, like go travel somewhere, just leave your current life and take a look at it from like a 3,000-foot view, kind of literally and figuratively speaking. When you're in the air and you're looking down, like it puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
So I think coming back from that, I was like, wow, there's just so much more going on here and so much more to life than me trying to be the best in business, the best in CrossFit, beating my brother and sister, looking a certain way, like all these things. So those were two big moments for me, having that support system and really real talk with my dad and then getting some distance from it as well.
Awesome. So then you've also talked about taking self-care too far,
Mm-hmm.
which is a natural. And I think you kind of see that play out just in what you've already shared about how you went from being a competitive swimmer in your youth to being like, enough of this. I'm a teenager, damn it. I'm going to have some fun. And then going way over the other end, right, into college, and then trying to bring it back in, but then getting sucked back into that sort of competitive athlete mode. And you transition out again with the perspective of an adult. Um, but it sounds like there was this self-care going too far again. Can you tell me what that looks like for you?
Yeah. I mean, you're already kind of like starting to see that pattern that I think a lot of women experience. I always say every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you go very deep into one thing, there's a chance that you're going to rebel in the opposite direction. equally as aggressively. We see this happen with a lot of young women who, and this is kind of where the notion of self-care can go too far. What I mean by that is any woman, I say young women because it's really prevalent in young women, but like really could be anybody. If you dive deep into that wellness culture, clean eating, which could very well end up being orthorexia, right, at some point,
yeah,
right, which is one version of being unhealthy and unhappy. Okay, you start to pull yourself out of that. But then what happens? You see this anti-diet, like diet starts tomorrow culture, which is the answer to wellness culture, right? So there's these two kind of ways of thinking and living that we're seeing on social media and online, and it's obviously seeping into these women's and men's, let's be real here, everybody, lives where, okay, what is the answer to clean eating and pure ingredients and, oh gosh, like all of this nonsense that comes with wellness and clean eating culture? It is skipping days at the gym because you don't feel like going and you're listening to your body. It is ordering in food maybe unnecessarily because you had a long day at work and you need to like just order in and you don't feel like cooking something. It's, it's self-care taken too far. You're kind of going into that, like, I want to find balance, but you've totally crossed over balance. And now you're going into the other end of the spectrum of unhealthy and happy. Right. And this also happens with, recovering dieters, right? In the exact same sense, they go from a place of restrict, restrict, restrict. They rebound from that. And then they go to a place of overeat, overeat, overeat. Right. And they skip that middle ground. And so when I say like self-care goes too far, it is like, okay, yeah, like you got to start to understand that self-care isn't skipping the gym because you had a hard day. It's not ordering a pizza because you need to give yourself a break. It is maybe that every once in a while after you've had 80% of your days being consistent on and quote unquote on track. And I love that term, but here we are. And for me, there was a period of that for sure, because of course, I was trying to rebel against, my dad had that talk. I went to Europe for 2 weeks, ate whatever I want when I was on vacation, came back, and that kind of seeped into my normal life, my regular life. So after I got that perspective and I was like, okay, I'm going to start to get it together and not be so hard on myself and all that stuff, it turned into, I'm going to eat whatever I want. I'm going to stop tracking my food. I'm going to, just live my life. And I gained weight back, and I started to be the same weight where I was when I was partying in my late teens and early 20s. And so it took me, gosh, and I think this is just a great lesson for everybody. Like, holy smokes, if you take a look at when I started to try and find what my happiest and healthiest body would look like 10 years ago, I would say I probably just started to find that balance maybe 4 years ago. So it takes a while, right? And you have to go through those phases, and you have to sometimes learn the hard way, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't something that can be discovered and resolved in a 90-day program.
No. Oh my God, no, absolutely not.
It is years. It is yours. Yeah. And I really do appreciate too that you started this conversation off by saying you're still in the process of understanding and developing and solidifying those healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
I think that there are expectations that at some point we will be healed, right? And I'm air quoting here. Healing being like end of journey, walk out, all done, finito, it's history. And our brains don't work like that.
No. And life doesn't work like that.
And life doesn't work like that. When we develop a coping skill, whether it's adaptive or maladaptive, it's in there. And one of the things that I've personally experienced and also witnessed is that you can have your shit together for a long time, and then something happens. Maybe it's you're transitioning a parent to hospice. Maybe it's you've just had a newborn. They aren't sleeping. They're struggling with eating. You're not sleeping. Life has gone cuckoo, and your stress level is higher than it's ever been in your adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when life is crazy enough that even if you haven't had a drink of alcohol, binge eaten, what have you, for a decade or more, suddenly you're there again.
Yeah.
And you're staring down this barrel of something that you thought you were over.
Right. Yep.
You got it here. And I mean, consistently across the board, everybody's response is, oh shit, how did I end up here? I thought I was done with this.
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, I don't have the answer, but I have a answer that has helped me a lot in this. And if it's so simple, obviously not easy, but it's like, if you can you can somehow get yourself to a place of expecting it to happen,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's going to happen, then you can start to prepare yourself. Because I think those people who are in that mindset of, okay, I'm done, they get totally blindsided, slapped across the face with zero preparedness, and there's no or very little like strength to get them through that. I talk to my clients a lot about visualization, and it's like, I think it's such a powerful thing. It can kind of seem like, woo, like, okay, visualization, what are you talking about? But I mean, go to I think of Olympic athletes, weightlifters, okay? Okay. And it's like, there are studies on it that show the effectiveness of it, okay? So it's like, there's this weightlifter, they have 3 lifts to do, okay? 10 seconds to go make that one lift, and if they fail, they fail. That's it. They have they have in that moment of 10 seconds or whatever, however much, I can't even remember how long it's on the clock, but they have to wait X amount of time to do their second lift. And so what goes into that is like, they're sitting there, and you'll see them, if you ever watch weightlifting, you'll be sitting backstage or on the chair there, and they'll be like closing their eyes. They'll be looking, they'll be visualizing. They have to see and feel out in their mind how that lift is going to go. And so I try and talk about this to my clients, where it's like, hey, start to visualize what your weekend's going to look like when you're out and about and going to these events and you're on vacation. Start to visualize what it would look like if you were derailed. Start to visualize what it would look like if you were to go to an event and they had totally different array of food than you expected to be there. What are you going to do? And even just that moment of sitting in that space where you're starting to think about what are the potential realities. And so for me, because my next potential reality is one that you were saying, we could have a newborn baby in the next year. And for me, that excites me, like really excites me, where it's like, oh, I'm so excited to have a new obstacle that I can start to figure out. Like, it's going to take new planning and new skills, and it's going to develop me as a human being and as a mother and as a person. And I'm going to be able to bring a new conversation to the next podcast that I'm on about how to overcome things. But the only reason that I'm able to look at that from a place of like pure excitement and looking forward to it is because I've been expecting it. Like, I know it's coming. Yeah. And so, yeah. And it may not be the answer, but it's helped me a ton, where it's like, shit will always hit the fan in life. just be prepared.
Exactly. We conveniently forget that life is inherently chaotic.
Exactly. And it can be something as micro as oh, you're on a weight loss journey and you go to your friend's like backyard barbecue and they say that there's going to be healthy food, but you get there and there's like chips and stuff. Okay, cool. Prepare for that. To something as macro as, having a newborn and your schedule gets totally like chaotic and out of whack and nothing you could ever expect, right? These instances pop up in your day and life all the time, but we think for some reason that it's all just going to be like, oh, okay, I've spent a couple weeks doing the work. I'm good. Like everything's going to be smooth sailing from now on. And it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. It's definitely helpful to have backup plans, right? You have your best laid plan. Okay, this is what I'm planning for. And then, okay, well, if that doesn't work out, like, what's my plan B? What's my backup? I mean, small case in point, I'm in Spain and the week before Easter is like a big freaking deal. Yeah. Everything, things are intermittently open or shut down. It's our first Easter here. I don't really know what's going to be open when or not. And I did really well, but didn't realize that Easter Monday is a thing. The day after Easter, everything is shut down.
Yeah.
So I buy just enough to get through the weekend, anticipating everything's going to be shut down through the weekend. I plan out my meal plan for this week. I'm all set on all right, Monday morning, I'm going to go, I'm going to get all produce. No, Aimee, you're not.
Yeah. Life has other plans for you. Yeah.
It's Easter Monday, don't you know? I don't know what that means. I mean, because Spain observes religious holidays, but is by and large not religious.
Yeah.
So I don't know what originally was supposed to happen on Easter Monday, but then it's everything being shut down. And so I'm like, well, shit, where am I going to get my protein? Where am I going to get my produce? I don't know. We're going to have to figure this out. And I managed to cobble together what I needed between what we had, the scraps that I had left over in the fridge.
Yep.
And the few things that were open. But my meal plan this week is not, it's not going to happen. Right. It started off differently. I now have different food in the fridge based on availability. I'm going to roll with it. And we can't be too heavily attached to the initial plan.
Yes. Could not have said it better myself, because that is probably the biggest cause of self-sabotage that I see is, the original plan not going as planned.
Yeah.
Right. And you see that as an excuse to, all right,
this isn't going to work.
Screw it. Yeah, this isn't going to work. Screw it. Right. I think like my biggest goal is to help build like a level of resilience in our clients. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest thing that we're trying to do is start to build that resilience, start to build that creative way of thinking and thinking on the fly and thinking on your feet, especially because we're working with so many busy women too. It's like the chances of things going wrong are not just like, like maybe, it's probably, right?
Expect it to. Exactly.
Expect it to. Yeah. I think that's a really good conversation. I haven't really dove into that a lot with like on any podcast or anything like that. But I think that's like such an important message is just continue to expect things to go not wrong, because it's not wrong, but expect them to go differently than you had initially planned. And if you can wrap your head around that, then you're not going to get into that screw it mode nearly as often of ordering and takeout when things didn't go your way.
Exactly. It's going to be, oh, here it is. Here's my opportunity to practice the backup plan. Here's my opportunity to be resilient. Here's my opportunity to be creative.
Exactly. Yeah. Seeing it as, and I even wrote this, I think it's in my book. Like I wrote this in my book where it's like every challenge is an opportunity and you need to start looking at these challenges as opportunities. Like if you really care about your health, then you should also care about your self-development, like your personal development. And in all areas, like we just talked about, resilience, creativity, thinking on the fly, like whatever it is. And those only come with challenges, right? Like they literally only present themselves as an opportunity to get stronger, like through challenges. And so what are you doing trying to avoid challenges oh, you want to become a better person, but you're also like scared of screwing up when a challenge presents itself. It's like, okay, like there's a total disconnect there,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yeah. On a almost a side tangent that's somewhat
Mhm.
related, I see too in the health and wellness field with people are in the position we are where they are coaches, they're fitness professionals, they're health professionals, and keep at one more certification, one more degree in order to be ready to help people, right? Like
Yeah.
to learn more to be ready. No, girl, you need to get out in the field and you need to start talking to people so that you learn what you don't know that you need to know because you
Yeah.
can't learn everything and then get started. Life teaches you the experience that you need to
Yep.
be an amazing practitioner. It doesn't
Yes.
come from a textbook. It doesn't come from a course. It doesn't come from some like guru sage on the stage who's presenting all the answers and will teach you everything you need to know about functional
Yeah.
what have you.
Well, I'll even go a step further than that and say the more you learn and the more you know is probably going to turn you into a worse coach.
Yes, thank you.
Because what are you going to do? You're going to try and spew out all the things that you know. Like, and I see this happen with new coaches all the time. I worked
Yeah.
with one and oh my God, he drove me nuts where it was like, he was so knowledgeable. And then he would get up in front of a class of 30 people who are there to learn the basics and he would spew out all this information. And it was like, okay, great. We get it, dude. Like, you know what you're talking about, but like, how are you going to translate that higher level knowledge that you have into something applicable and tangible for Sally that just walked in and doesn't know how to pick up a weight safely? Right.
Exactly.
And the best coaches are the ones who are able to translate that. The absolute best coaches are the ones who are able to get the clients to do the things. Right. And if your clients are not doing the things, they might not understand what you're asking them to do. And if they don't understand what you're asking them to do, you need to look at the way that you're communicating it. And I find that the coaches who spend the most time learning and learning and learning before they actually practice are the ones who don't know how to communicate it best. They don't know how to communicate it effectively. They're too in their head. They're too smart. So there's actually a chance of it doing you a disservice. Like it's doing the opposite of what you actually want it to do. Like I had a Q&A with Sam Miller. If he's he's so smart. He has a business called the Metabolism School and you can follow him on Instagram. And we had a great Q&A with him yesterday. And, and while we were, listening to him, we were talking about everything from gut health to hormones to PCOS to metabolic restoration and adaptation and everything like these higher level things that, yes, a lot of coaches need to understand if they're working with clients one-on-one. And as he's talking about it, I get into my own head for sure, where I'm like, oh, I need to learn more about that. And I need to learn more about that. And I need to refresh on this. And what course can I take next? And da 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 da. And I mean, until probably 9 p.m. last night, I need to snap myself out of it where it's like, no, I have the things that I need. I can always take an extra course later if I want to. But like, no, like just, you don't need an extra number or letter behind your name. It's really like, get the basics, go practice, and then use that to figure out what you want to do next.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think it's a way that those of us in the field get caught in. It's another form of perfection, right? If I just know enough, then I'll be good enough that I can essentially overcome my own insecurities. That's not what makes you good enough. I mean, there are a lot of confident idiots out there with huge Instagram followings who don't know shit. Okay. So confidence isn't like, it's not necessarily the answer.
Confident idiots. That's the majority of coaches online these days. Like, and this is talk about trying to like, okay, I feel myself getting to this point of like the same screw it point that I got to like my physical body composition. I am like on the verge of getting there with like social media and online.
Oh, God, yeah.
Bullshit. Okay. Like I am so over it. I am so over the day in, day out trying to play with these, yeah, confident idiots on social media who have massive followings. And so what, like, for me, like, I see that and I get in my head, I'm like, okay, I need to create this content. I need to create that. And I'm going to do something like that. And I'm going to put that because obviously that's what people want to see because they have a big following and I need more followers and I need more clients and I want more clients and da da da.
I
So
play
then
that
I,
game with myself too. Yeah.
yeah, right. And then you start creating this content, but you don't like creating it. So you feel resistance and then you post it and you're not getting the likes that you want. So you're like, what the hell why is this even like worth it? And it's just this nasty cycle. And
Hashtag my life.
right. Yeah. Like I'm over it. I'm so over it. I've been on the online coaching, like strictly online coaching for 7 years now. Or maybe not even 7 years. We started in person. So I should say maybe like 4 years. And I'm like done. I'm so freaking done. Like I am ready to just start saying what I want to say.
Yeah.
And I started posting, like I did my first video on Instagram the other day where it's like, here's day one of me just like talking about the things that I want to talk about. Because I don't know if you do this, but like the deadly like doom scrolling of like trying to get inspiration for content, done with that. Like, yeah, it's everybody and their cousin's dog walker is a nutrition coach these days.
I know. That's actually why I started this podcast, was because I can't stand social media. I can't stand that game. I can't stand the, give 30% of your income to Zuckerberg for ad space so that you can get seen, because you can't even get seen because the space is crowded, right? And churn out, just churn out
Yep.
churn more vomit for people to consume. And it takes me away from what I want to be doing. And then, between that pressure and then all of the social pressure during the pandemic to only speak and think and behave in one way that was acceptable. And I just, I reached my breaking point and I'm like, fuck social, fuck the algorithm, fuck being politically correct, because now there is no way to be politically correct, because everything you say, somebody will take to offense to and try and cancel you. So I'm part of a podcast where I say whatever the fuck I want, because here we are, because it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter.
But the other amazing thing about this medium, the medium of a podcast, is we have an hour to add context to the conversation. We have an hour to add nuance and gray areas and explain our ways of thinking, where, every time I pick up a phone to record myself saying something, I immediately see that clock ticking and say, oh my God, I only have a minute to get at what I want to say. And if I don't say it all in the right way, then I start, and then you record it. And then I prevent myself from actually posting it because I'm like, okay, maybe I didn't address that, or maybe I said something wrong here, or maybe I need to explain that more, or maybe somebody's going to take offense to this particular word that I said there, like whatever it is. So the inherent nature of Instagram is to capture and retain attention very, very, very quickly. And I'm just inherently not that type of person. And I don't do this intentionally, obviously, but I sometimes don't give off a very good first impression when I walk into a room. It's just something I've been told. And I've been working on it for years and years and years. But even when I started coaching at a gym, like a long time ago, I was a member at the gym before I was a coach. And then when I became a coach, I obviously started like talking more and like coaching. And people would come up to me, they're like, oh my God, I thought you were so like intimidating when you were just a member here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then since then I've heard, at least a good handful of people say like, I thought you were so intimidating before I got to know you. And I'm like, well, like that. Okay. That is exactly why I have a hard time on social media, because social media is just first impressions, right? You have an instant to get somebody's attention. And if they don't like you in the first second, then, tough luck. And so, but what's nice about it, what does benefit me, is once they do follow me, like I have a great community of dedicated followers, which is amazing. And I have a great Facebook community. But for some reason, I have a hard time on the Instagram and like TikTok and stuff like that, where I feel like what I'm putting out there is not really just my true self, because my true self is I like to talk a lot. I like to add context. I like to chat and make sure that you, the podcast host, or you, the listener, are really truly understanding my intentions and what I'm trying to say and the meaning behind it and all that stuff. And I just don't think there's an opportunity to do that really on Instagram. And yeah, which is the reason why I'm trying to go more like in person and create partnerships and do live events and stuff like that, because then I have that chance to really show who I am in front of you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think too, I mean, that is appropriate because I believe that there are many people who've essentially binged too much on the candy that is Instagram. They have a stomach ache and they want a nourishing meal.
Well said. Do a little golf clap for that one.
They're like, this don't feel so good anymore.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Funny show adolescent girls are really fucked up because of all that. Maybe I should try something else.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. You know, this is so like unrelated, but sort of related. I'm so excited for like the new generation of children being born is going to be so interesting, because they are the children of the millennials who are getting sick of social media.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how they're raised. I mean, all of my friends are trying to raise their kids with no social media, only get phones when you're a certain age, like, because that's how we were grown up, and we also see what's happening. So I'm so curious to see like how this new generation grows up. I mean, obviously you put them in school and then like they're probably just get corrupt anyways because all their friends are doing it and all this stuff. But
perhaps not that generation. I will say, so I have a son, he's 10.
Okay.
And he's been in Montessori since the beginning.
Amazing.
Being in Montessori in one of the major tech cities in the United States is different than a Montessori school.
Hey, yeah.
Well, they're both the same Montessori. For those of you who know Montessori, they're both the original Montessori method, not the American Montessori International, but the original OG, Maria or bust Montessori method. And so in the United States, no screens in the classroom. It was a screen-free school. However, what I'm seeing here in Europe is, I swear to you, every 2 or 3 months, there is a panel, some kind of expert, some kind of like, let's gather the parents into the auditorium and remind them that screen time for children is detrimental to their physical and mental health. It is drilled in over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And the school has a very strict, very overt, clear policy that they do not believe any child should be having a cell phone if they are under the age of 16.
Yeah.
Certainly not any exposure to social media at all. And that their iPad time, their screen time should be severely limited to, I don't even know it. It's so low and we've not been able to bring it within their standards, but I won't even make up a number because I can't even think off the top of my head.
Like a couple hours a week type thing. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Like that is a lofty goal that we will aim to bit by bit. But and I love it. I don't know to what degree the parents are actually adhering to this, but certainly in a European culture, there isn't the societal pressure to put cell phones in children's hands at a young age, because there is more of an expectation that the community will support the child to some degree, that the other adults in the neighborhood aren't out to get you and your children. They're not going to kidnap or murder a child.
Yeah.
And that children are taken care of. That's still a prevailing belief here. And so I think there isn't as much of a need, or a perceived need, right?
Yeah.
And children also are not as coddled here as they are in the United States. They are free roaming. They start going, out into the park to play by themselves when they're, 7 years old.
Yeah.
And so they have more autonomy, more street smarts because they're exposed to that
Yeah.
life experience that we as parents, we are not allowed to give our children.
Yeah.
State.
Right. It's crazy. And they need that. They need to learn. They need to be in front of human real life people to start to understand, read body language, communicate, because that's where you get like that. That's where ultimately you build your own safety, is the ability to understand when someone's sketchy or when someone's not, and differentiate between somebody who's giving you a bad vibe and versus somebody who's not. When you're at the park playing alone, you do not get that on social media when people
Right.
are all putting on a bit on social media, right? Like you can't pick that up. Like there's no freaking way. So
Just as
100%.
just as we who are looking to find that middle balance with our health,
Mm-hmm.
to encounter those challenges, to learn,
Yeah.
adapt, and grow that resilience talking about, right? So too do our children need to fall on the playground, tumble off the jungle gym, scrape a
Yeah.
knee or two, and
Yeah.
learn that they are resilient and can survive the small things when they're young. So that way, well, when they're teenagers and their hormones are going completely off the wall and they're impulsive as they were when they're toddlers, but now more apt to do crazy ass shit like
Yeah.
race driving and heroin,
Yeah.
that that they've got some kind of like exposure to street smarts. But otherwise, it's just like, yeah, it's the consequences are so much more dire.
Yes. Oh, yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's hilarious. And I could not agree more. I love that conversation. And obviously I don't have the parenting experience to bring to the table there, but I will, and we're ready for it. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for you too. It's definitely
Thanks.
a wild ride.
Yeah, yeah.
I do want to wrap up shortly, but I do not want to leave this station without you sharing some of your tips and experiences with developing a sense of consistency and a sense of that middle ground with ADHD.
Mm. Oh my God. Well, this is like when I said earlier on that this is something I'm learning when it comes to like still in the middle of, when it comes to
Yeah.
like abandoning perfection. I am in the thick of this one.
Mm.
So, because I was only diagnosed with ADHD a year ago, right? Obviously, like, yeah. So I was diagnosed with ADHD. Well, I mean, obviously, I've had it. You don't really know what it is, or I didn't even really understand it, or what was going on in my brain, or where my anxiety was stemming from. I was seeing my therapist very regularly and went to a psychiatrist and all that stuff. And they finally diagnosed me and all this stuff. And I think that what was it? What was your question?
Speaking of ADHD,
Yeah, speaking of ADHD, what was the question about ADHD?
just strategies that use to maintain that consistency with the habits that you're.
Strategies. Okay, yeah. Consistency. That was the word. I was like, what is the word? Consistency. So we talked a lot about preparedness and planning. I think literally the only way that I've been able to stay consistent with my workouts, my eating, or whatever is when I know what I'm going to be doing.
Mhm.
Right. And the first time I realized this, way before I was even diagnosed with ADHD, but I had this tendency of going into the gym without a plan. And I would do, which some people can do. Some people who do are very neurotypical can do. They can go into a gym and they can be like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And they go. I, without a plan, would go into a gym and I would stare at the equipment. And then I would go over there and do like 30 seconds on something. And then I would go over there and do another thing. And then I would go over there and do another set. And then I would go over there and do another set. And then I would leave the gym feeling very scatterbrained and unaccomplished. I'd be like, oh, I just spent an hour in the gym, but what the heck did I do?
Yeah.
There was no intention. There was no planning. There was no structure. And so once I realized that what I needed was structure in the gym, I would then write out on a piece of paper. I would go to my like coach or like somebody, create a plan, create a program, go into the gym and go through the program and what was written in order. And I would feel that I would leave that gym feeling way better. I'd be like, oh, I just did the best workout because I followed the plan. But if you put that piece of paper, the program that I did, versus if I wrote down all the scattered random things that I did, the amount of work is probably the same, right? The amount of like output probably done in those two workouts were the same, but like the feeling after that I got of accomplishing something that was planned out ahead of time was like a dopamine hit to me. And obviously people with ADHD, they need those dopamine hits in order to keep them engaged and keep them acting on things that they want to be acting on, right? Like nobody with ADHD is going to do anything that doesn't give them like a shot of dopamine. So I recognize that,
I imagine that will help with the anxiety because you have a plan, you know what to do, you do it and say, I did it.
Exactly. And I started realizing for me that my dopamine hits were coming from checking things off. And to this day, I love creating a to-do list and checking those things off the to-do list. Like when I can cross that off, I'm like, shit, I feel good.
Yeah.
So then I realized that, and then I started to bring that over slowly into like my eating. And I mean, a huge trait that women with ADHD have is their meals are so unorganized. They'll go to the kitchen and grab a bite of this, and they'll have a spoon of peanut butter and they'll call that a meal. And their brain can't comprehend how to plan out and structure a wholesome, nutritious meal. And I was very, very similar. I still have obviously tendencies of just going into the kitchen and grabbing something without even like planning it. And so in the kitchen, I would do similar to kind of what you do now, just kind of menu plan. I don't really meal plan necessarily. Like I don't really like spending hours in the kitchen. I really don't like cooking. So I don't really spend that time making a bunch of amazing meals, but I do spend the time thinking about what I'm going to eat. And then I just make sure that my fridge is stocked with those things, right? So if like I have to take regular inventory of what's in my fridge, because if something is not there, then that's where my brain will go to, oh, I'll just have something else. And then if I have something else and I feel like I'm off track and I no longer check that thing off the to-do list. So the dopamine hit is no longer there. Whereas if I eat what was planned ahead of time, then I get that dopamine hit and I feel really good about it and I can keep going. So I think for me, I started to really understand and recognize like where my dopamine hits came from, what triggered them, what took them away, like what, what made me feel good basically. And then I would just start to implement little like strategy systems, like planning ahead of time, things like here and there. And that's just really helped me become consistent. And it's so interesting that I had all of those things in place well before I was even diagnosed with ADHD. I just thought it was who I was. Like I didn't even have a name for it. I dopamine hits, whatever. Like it was just kind of how I operated. But obviously when you get diagnosed with it, you're like, holy shit, that makes sense. Like, you're like, wow, like that my whole life is explained. Like that's really cool. So that's been really helpful for me. And being on medication, that helps. Like I'm a huge advocate for modern medicine, huge advocate for somebody not being ashamed or afraid to get help via medication if it's the right thing for you. It's totally changed my life. And now this is for me personally too. I am on anxiety medication, not on ADHD medication. I'm thinking of going back on it, but I have ADHD induced anxiety. So I find that like a lot of women who have ADHD will also have anxiety. Like it's very common for them to go together, and it can go either way, where I think some women will have, get kind of ADHD tendencies and symptoms because they're feeling anxious.
Right.
And then other women will get anxiety because of their ADHD. And so I have the latter, where if I find that if I can just control my anxiety, then I can manage the ADHD symptoms way better on my own. So that's why I chose to go on anxiety medication. And I find that really just helps me regulate my thinking and everything like that. I was on ADHD medication and I didn't experiment with a ton. There's so many, right? Like there's so many. And I know it takes a while to find the one that's right for you. And so I did it for a bit, but I just found that as long as I went back on, because I was off my anxiety medication, I was totally medication free for about a year. And it was the toughest year of my life. And it took me like a while to not just pun intended, swallow the pill of the fact that I needed to be back on it. But also even just putting the two together where it's like, holy shit, like I need to be back on it. And I totally didn't even realize. So I went back on my anxiety medication. As soon as I went back on, I was like, okay, like I can manage this, And so I'm a huge advocate for that and making sure that you find what's going to work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Finding the right medication, like if the right medication is out there for you, finding it is such a game changer for people.
Huge. It's life-changing. It's 100% life-changing.
Yeah.
And this can be a total other podcast episode, but like just being an advocate for your own health is something probably like the thing I am most passionate about. Me and a woman here in Kingston where I live, we're going to start a nonprofit organization for women to be able to connect easily with health professionals in specific fields so they can take their health into their own hands. And I'm like, this is a whole like side project that we're going to do. And I'm very, very, very excited about it. But the reason I bring this up is because I have an old white man of a doctor. Okay. And every time I go to him, I have to push for things. And what were we? The last time I chatted with him, I was like, I'm gonna take my IUD out. He was asking me about because it's the expiration's coming up, and I was like, I'm gonna take it out. My husband and I want to start trying for kids, and he's like, well, you're on sertraline, and I'm like, yeah, I'm on sertraline, and he's like, well, you need to get off of it, and I'm like, no, I don't, and he's like, yeah, you need to get off of it if you're going to be pregnant. You can't be on anxiety medication, and I'm like, yes, I can. And like, I've done my research. My sister-in-law is a doctor. Like, I know that your old white man way of thinking is not up to date. And, and I know that the small risk of me being on 50 milligrams, which is a small dosage of sertraline while being pregnant, the benefits of that totally outweighs the potential mental health crisis that I could go through while being pregnant off medication.
Right.
So I will rather take that risk because I do not want to go through maybe I still will go through postpartum depression, but it might not be as severe as it would be as if I were off of it, So I had to really put my foot down with him and say, no, I'm going to stay on it. And he was like, oh, okay, that's fine. And I was like, yeah, just like, bro, like
he just said, no, you can't. And then when you pushed back, he was like, nah, okay.
Yep.
What?
Yep. And he's done this for and I know other women who experience the same thing with like their doctors, right? Where it's like, they'll say one thing but a lot of women won't push back.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm so fearful of that, where they won't push back and they'll follow exactly what their doctor says. And I get it. I want to be very clear where it's like, there is zero judgment, obviously, because your doctor is a figure that you're supposed to trust and you're supposed to. So I get it. But I just think with the availability of information these days and the amount of resources that are out there, you can take your health into your own hands. You can talk to multiple people. You can get different opinions. And the only person that knows your body best is you. Mm-hmm. And so if you know that something's right for you, I think it's necessary for you to put your foot down and say, no, I know this about myself. I need to do this for me. And they're probably going to if you do it, they'll probably give you, be like, yeah, okay. You're like, yeah, fine. And that's exactly what he did. He's like, yeah, okay. I was like, okay, great.
So it wasn't even like a rigidly, strongly held opinion of himself. It was probably just
this is what I think.
Yeah. This is what I heard in a conference 30 years ago.
Yep. This is what I read in my textbook while I was in school, back in the 1950s. And so, I'm just going to stick by the book.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think, and this is when, you're in Canada. I know that they don't have quite the pharmaceutical commercial
push,
in Canada that they have in the States. But for those of you who are American and are listening, when they say in the medication commercials, have a conversation with your doctor, that means you can ask questions.
Right.
If your doctor says something to you that has you feeling like, I don't think that's correct for me, ask them why they think that way. Where is their reasoning coming from? Because they may not know information that which is, in your instance, it is not worth it to me to go through a mental health crisis while pregnant if I go off this medication when my sister-in-law, who's a physician, and everything that I've seen, doing my Google research, which admittedly is not a medical degree.
Yeah. Yes. Let's be clear. Yeah.
Yeah. Indicates that this isn't a all or nothing situation, right? This isn't an absolute hard no.
Exactly. There are gray areas, as there are gray areas to a lot of health things, right? And yeah, I think so. What you said there is important too. Like healthcare in Canada is so different than healthcare in the States, and I mean, there's so many. Getting a family doctor in most cities in Canada right now is next to impossible, right? So there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people who don't have a physician that they can trust or they can go to ask questions. So then what happens? That's when they go on TikTok and Google and they start researching for themselves. And yes, while it is not 100%, it's not a medical degree by any chance, but people have gotten really good at it. And they've started to figure out who, like, people that they can go to just ask questions, start putting together the pieces for themselves, because that's quite literally the only option that they have, unfortunately. They don't have that trusted resource. They don't have that trusted figure that they can go to. And so I am very lucky that I do have a family doctor and that I can go to. But at the same time, I know that he questioned me when I wanted to go on ADHD. He told me I didn't have ADHD. He told me, all these things. And I'm like, you don't fucking know me from a hole in the wall. Like, and so, yeah, it's different. It's totally kind of bogus sometimes, but anyways, that's a whole other conversation I think we can save for a rainy day.
Yeah, the state of healthcare in North America is
let's not even go there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Robyn, it has been such a delight to get to spend this time with you. I'm so glad that we did too. So if people want to find you, can they still follow you on social?
Yes.
It's like the status there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going anywhere on social media. All I'm gonna do is just switch the way that I kind of approach it, I guess. So Robyn with a Y, Robyn Shaw Jarvis is my personal my health coaching account on Instagram. So you can totally follow me on Instagram. But my website where everything lives is bodzii.com. So BODZZII for Americans. BODZII.com. And then once you're there, you can click anywhere and find me on all the platforms and stuff like that. So that's probably the easiest place to go.
Awesome. And for those who want to read your book, what is the name of the book and where
is it? Absolutely. Hustle But Healthy, the 5 pillars of sustainable wellness and weight loss for busy women. So yeah, I just search Hustle But Healthy on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and you can get a copy of it there. And that honestly is the best place to start, right? It is my history of coaching, try and summed up in a few hundred pages. And it talks a lot about what we did today, but it kind of just goes over my whole belief and philosophy on how to approach health and women's wellness and even weight loss and stuff like that. So yeah.
Excellent. All right. Yeah. I'd love to have you back to talk about that book in an episode and go over those 5 pillars with you.
Yes.
I think that would be fantastic.
Amazing. Let's do it.
All right. Super. All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely my pleasure. Any and all information shared here is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not to be misconstrued as offering medical advice. Listening to this podcast does not constitute a provider-client relationship. Note, I'm not a doctor nor a nurse, and it is imperative that you utilize your brain and your medical team to make the best decisions for your own health. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked to this podcast are at the user's own risk. No information nor resources provided are intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Be a smart human and do not disregard or postpone obtaining medical advice for any medical condition you may have. Seek the assistance of your healthcare team for any such conditions and always do so before making any changes to your medical, nutrition, or health plan. If you have found some nuggets of wisdom, make sure to subscribe, rate, and share Blasphemous Nutrition with those you care about. As you navigate the labyrinth of health advice out there, remember, health is a journey, not a dietary dictatorship. Stay skeptical, stay daring, and challenge the norms that no longer serve you. If you've got burning questions or want to share your own flavor of rebellion, slide into my DMs. Your stories fuel me, and I love hearing them. Thanks again for tuning into Blasphemous Nutrition. Until next time, this is Aimee signing off, reminding you that truth is nuanced and any dish can be made better with a little bit of sass.